let's just go ahead and get started.
Okay.
It's Friday night. 6 beers in, ready to go. Feeling loose? That's not true. Hello and welcome to Flanagan's Wake, a Doof Media podcast screaming at Mike Flanagan's Meemies. My name is Scott Daly, and joining me as always for a midnight Red Room tea party, it's Matt Freeman. How's it going today, Matt? Drink your tea.
It's going well. Sugar, milk, rat poison?
I think my favorite part was like when Liv asks Abigail how she takes her tea, and she's a child, so she's like, I don't know. I don't know what tea is.
This is a very sad episode. That's why we're making light of it like this.
I'm desperately trying to find something, some little soupçon of fun in this episode.
We try to keep things light around here, folks, but Mike Flanagan makes it hard sometimes.
Yeah. This week on the show, Matt, we've reached the penultimate episode of Mike Flanagan's 10-part series, The Haunting of Hill House. Episode 9, Screaming Meemies. We spend our time entirely in the past for the first and last time on the show, as we dive deep into Liv Crain and finally learn what happened on the night. This episode was written by Meredith Averill, edited by Brian Jeremiah Smith, and of course directed by Mr. Mike Flanagan. Matt, Screaming Meemies, what did you think? How you doing?
Oh,
you okay?
I'm upset. So this is the Liv episode, right? Like we knew we were going to get a Liv episode. I probably should have predicted formally that episode 9 was going to be the Liv episode, because it wouldn't make sense for the finale to be the Liv episode. Anyway, so my experience of this episode at a very high level was like, oh, okay, we're doing the Liv episode. We're going to see what happened that night. That's what we're doing. And at a certain point in the episode, and it's funny because I can't actually put my finger on the exact moment, I started to feel this creeping dread because I was like, wait a minute, this isn't just like, okay, we're finally going to see what happened. We're going to find out something that's going to be really different from what we expect. We're going to get a curveball. There's something in the vibe of what's happening and the way this is shot and the way information is being doled out that makes me feel like I'm being prepared for some horrible twist. In fact, what actually happened, and I felt this building dread the whole time, and sometimes I text you my thoughts while I'm watching because I'm literally using our chat window as a note-taking app. And I started typing like, why do I have the feeling like there's going to be some kind of horrible twist? And then before I could send it, that was essentially the moment when you see Abigail is in Luke's bed.
Mm-hmm.
And then everything clicked into place. And I just, I had the emotional reaction of like, oh no, because like I knew what was going to happen, basically. I mean, not exactly, obviously, but I was like, oh God, oh no, I see how all of this connects together. But it was an interesting experience, and I don't want to harp on it too much, but like it was interesting to me how the episode managed to like lay this undercurrent of dread without me necessarily like some of it's the rat poison, some of it's the like seeing what Liv is going through and the particular ways the screws are being turned on her by the ghost.
Yeah,
it all culminates in this horrible like feeling, and then it leaves you like really sad and brokenhearted because you realize this whole time you haven't even really been aware of what happened.
Yeah,
like it wasn't just that these kids had to deal with their mom killing herself, which is bad enough. They had to deal with their mom murdering a child and then killing herself, which is
Matt, they don't know that.
So you think okay, I'm gonna trust you, but how would that not come out in some way?
Did any time in the police conversation with Hugh, did they mention the body of a 5-year-old child that was also found on site?
So Okay, so the implication being that like they can't even get into the red room where the body is gone or something?
Or the body has been moved or something. Remember, we have a 3-hour window between when Hugh leaves and
Ah,
when.
yes. Okay, well, yeah, so Hugh probably moved the body.
So the thing we definitely know for sure is that Steve, Shirley, and Theo still think Abigail was
A
Luke's
ghost.
imaginary
Yeah,
friend.
or imaginary friend, right.
Yeah, and Luke sees Abigail in the window and believes Abigail's okay because he saw her in the window as he left, and probably communicated as much to Nell, who was the only other person that knew definitively that Abigail was just a real person. She was the daughter of the Dudleys who was living in the Dudleys' house just out the way. Yeah, I mean, I like what you said about the way it kind of slowly builds the dread to this. I think it does it very cleverly here. Some ways very obviously, like the rat poison, like Chekhov's rat poison. The camera. This is something that I was like waiting for you to mention because it's kind of hilarious where you know where it goes. Like from the moment the rat poison is introduced, and I think it's episode 7. Literally, like every time we're in the basement, Flanagan will just rest the camera right in front of the rat poison for a beat or two, and then we'll move on, like every single time. And he does it really interestingly in this episode where he'll rest the camera on the rat poison, and then when Liv goes into the basement to get the rat poison, he puts the camera in the exact same position. It's in the same angle, but this time the lights are on. We just see like the outline of the bottle. And it's this really clever thing where like you're just pinging people's memories, and that like that shot, that angle, exactly what it is, and he's going to keep it in the dark to let your brain do its thing on its own without showing it to you. Yeah, I mean the rat poison was very very like deliberately set up, but we didn't know what for, right? And it's to your point that like all we knew about that night was that Liv ultimately takes her life. uh, there is a line in the police interview with Hugh where they mention the other body, but I'm 99% sure they're talking about the body that they found in the walls earlier in the time. They're not talking about Abigail's body.
So, speaking from someone who's only just seen episode 9, like that could be the red herring curveball, is that you watching the show the first time think that they're talking about the body in the wall, but they are talking about Abigail's body, and that perhaps again, I'm just saying this from the perspective of someone who has watched the show that I've watched. It's entirely possible that everyone in the show knows about Abigail and knows that she's dead, and they just haven't been talking about it because it's this horribly painful truth.
Yeah.
That is bundled up with the tragedy of their mother's death, which is much more immediately relevant to them.
Yeah.
But it's, as you're saying, also possible that Hugh moved the body. I mean, there's all sorts of interesting implications here because Mrs. Dudley is I don't know. I don't know what to say. Mrs. Dudley is a big question mark now because
yeah,
she's I like, part of me almost feels like I consider her a threat now.
Interesting.
But because of the fact that like, okay, well, you killed my children and now I'm going to kill your children, sort of.
Sure.
And she's been living at Hill House this whole time, or near Hill House this whole time.
Yeah, I mean, we are told that it is Mrs. Dudley that finds Nell's body, right? It is Mrs. Dudley that calls Hugh to let him know that he finds Nell hanging. She finds Nell hanging from the library. So yeah, she's still working there. She's still visiting the house, doing God knows what. Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you're paying off there is, to me, one of the most fascinating aspects of this episode is, and part of why I think Flanagan very successfully with his writing team builds the dread that you're talking about, that some twist, something else is going to happen here, is we have two very pointed conversations between Liv and Mrs. Dudley. We have the one that kind of opens the episode where Liv gives that wonderful monologue about the stones raining, which again is Flanagan pulling something from Hill House, the novel, into this story.
I've been through hail before, but not like that. Now this sounded like rocks, like actual stones. One of the windows in my sister's room broke, and Janet shrieking, and I ran in there, and I could see it. It was rocks. It was small, black stones hitting the windows, bouncing up off the ground outside. I saw the stone that broke the window, too, right there on the carpet.
We talked at the very, very beginning of this whole thing how this was a very loose adaptation. It was an adaptation that a remix, I think is the word Flanagan himself used. And one of the things that has been most surprising to me on this rewatch with you is just how actually cleverly close to The Haunting of Hill House, Shirley Jackson's novel, this story manages to be. Like, yes, obviously, like, the characters are different, the overarching movements of the plot are different, but like everything else is there. Everything is there. It's pretty remarkable, actually.
Yeah, all these little details, I mean, even little things like, oh, there's like dogs outside.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like there's nothing ever comes of that. Just like in the book, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Before we move on from the rat poison completely,
Sure.
I did want to mention, like, the way in which things get set up. Sometimes you make assumptions, right? So I just wanted to say, like, I didn't bring it up not because I didn't notice it, but because I just like made an assumption where I was like, okay, what we're probably going to do because we know nobody died of rat poison is what I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're probably going to do is we're going to have that scene, you know what I'm talking about, where Liv is like pouring the children a drink, and then Hugh is like, Liv, what are you doing? And then you look over and you realize that it's the bottle of rat poison, and it's like, oh my god, and that's it, and then that was the setup, that was the payoff. I'm not saying I thought it was going to look exactly like that, but the point is, like, I thought it was going to be a tool used to show her deterioration, not that somebody was going to be killed with rat poison. Because, I mean, I guess I should have been a little bit more open-minded and been like, well, we have other characters that could have been killed, like Mr. Dudley could have been killed. We don't know for a fact that he's still alive, so I could have like elaborated on that a bit. But anyway, you notice all kinds of things when you're watching stuff, and you just sort of like file them into bins based on like tropes, or like, I think the show will resolve this, and then it just doesn't strike you as like, oh, that's gonna really screw me over later.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right, and I think that's kind of the weird way of how we are watching these shows and talking about them, is like, I wasn't expecting you to say, Scott, I have a theory about the rat poison. I just like, I knew you clocked it. I was just not going to draw any additional attention to it, because I never want to feel like I'm leading the conversation to where the story is going. I want to point out things, but not point out like specifics that are like plot movement things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's the type of thing where I was just like, if Matt brings it up, yeah, we can talk about the clear Chekhov's gun we're establishing here. But I think yeah, based on your understanding, it didn't jive with what we knew about what happened that night, for sure.
Yeah, and also it's interesting. I wanted to talk about this kind of meta point with you. Like, I don't really think that this is a show. This is one of those shows that's meant to be like figured out.
No.
Like, it's not a mystery box show. So if it's like, I could have foreseen that Abigail was a real person. I really could have. Like, that's one thing where if I had sat down and thought and been like, well, how would I, like, let's brainstorm on all of these elements. We have the element, I think you said this to me when we were chatting earlier, like, oh, nobody believes Luke. That's kind of the whole thing with Luke. Maybe that's the thing you should anchor on, is you should believe Luke. Well, Luke says that he has a friend named Abigail, and Abigail happens to be a ghost that only appears during daylight and only appears outside of Hill House. Two things that none of the other ghosts have ever done. Yeah. That's weird. And then you can start putting things together. Although I don't know if it's until this episode that Mrs. Dudley says that they have a child. Maybe Mr. Dudley mentions it in the monologue. I don't remember.
So Mr. Dudley, this is the writing being very clever here. When Mr. Dudley is telling the story of how their daughter died or was stillborn, he says, "We lost our first," is the way he says it, and that's all he says. So the implication there, that when you say it like that there is a second, right? But that's all he goes into, and it is not until this episode that either one of the Dudleys starts specifically talking about the fact that, hey, we do have children or a child, and she lives with us where we live. Yeah, I mean, it's very cleverly done, where it's like they don't. It's like a lie of omission, right? Where they
Mm-hmm.
don't specifically. There's nothing there that contradicts anything. It just doesn't ever come up. Yeah.
But I don't feel too bad about not having figured it out because I don't really feel like this is that kind of show.
No, not at all. I mean, like, it's the same with the treehouse reveal, right? It's this idea that these things are hidden in plain sight, kind of like the ghosts hidden in plain sight, but you're not going to notice them. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Abigail, the way the show shoots Abigail when she does show up the handful of times before we learn that she's real, it is contradictory to the way we see every other ghost in the show. Yeah, like you said, she's always outside. It's always daylight. Like, they even do. I think we talked about this in episode 2 because I think Abigail is technically one of the hidden ghosts in episode 2, where it's a moment where Shirley and Liv are talking. I think it's when they're talking about the Forever House in that second episode, and behind Liv's shoulder is one of the hidden ghosts in the background, and the behind Shirley's shoulder outside of Hill House is like the vague shape of a little girl that is Abigail. And again, she's outside, she's in the daylight, and yeah, so like all of the ghosts in Hill House are wreathed in shadow or hidden in a corner or around a door or under something. Or there's one in this episode that's particularly creepy. It's when Liv is getting water for her headache medicine, and Luke and Shirley are fighting, and it's just like right in the corner of I think it's the pantry, like looking out from the glass. It's very creepy. But yeah, Abigail contradicted that. So yeah, I mean, like, there is perhaps a person who was consciously picking up on the fact that the show is not treating her the same and could have perhaps made that mental leap to say, oh, I bet she's real. But yeah, the show doesn't want you to solve that. And it's not interested in telling a story like that. And so, like, yeah, all these reveals, that reveal, the treehouse reveal, like, these are just the bent neck lady, even, right? These are just things. I think these are things that are doing what we've been doing on the show from the very beginning, which is we are laying things out for you, and then we are shifting things just a little bit to bring new context to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's like the first couple episodes. That's what we talked about a lot, and we talked about that in relation to seeing the siblings interact with each other and only seeing that from one side and then suddenly shifting to seeing from another. And I think one thing the show has done as it's moved on is it's moved from just like a showing of context through background to the showing of context almost more specifically to what people are actually seeing or experiencing. Like, seeing things from Hugh's perspective and allowing us to see that Liv is over his shoulder talking, that is also a context shift from the episode prior, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just a more specific and literal one than, oh, we understand this scene now more because we've seen how Luke got here versus how Steve got here. Like, right? It's the same thing. It's just a different flavor of that. And I think that's the same thing with the treehouse. That's the same thing with Abigail. That's the same thing with the bent neck lady. Like, it's these context shifts that allow us to go, oh shit, okay, I thought I understood, now I'm not so sure anymore. And that's kind of what the show is about, is like, this thing happened all these years ago, everyone has their own opinion of it, and they're slowly learning that what they thought it was is not quite what it actually was.
Yeah, context shifts and perspective shifts. I think not even Hugh may in some ways understand more than everyone else does, but he doesn't understand what she went through, right?
Yeah.
And never will probably understand, that being the thing that we're going to spend a lot of time talking about this episode, which is the lever that the house used to pry her sanity open, which was the fear of the safety for her children.
Yeah.
Which ironically is what it uses to first try to and then eventually succeed in taking her children, and arguably succeed in taking the Dudley's child too, because I kept thinking about how Hugh described the house, described the Crane family as an unfinished meal for the house. And if you consider the fact that the Dudleys also used to live in the house and then left, then the Dudleys may also be an unfinished meal for the house. And so it wasn't just like a coincidence. It was like it was sort of all part of the house's master plan to get the Dudley child, which I I noticed that I keep saying the house even now, and it's interesting because this episode really personifies the house as like, this one particular ghost.
Yeah. We're talking about Poppy Hill, of course. Yeah.
Poppy Hill. And I think it's just I don't like to just like jump to conclusions or over update on things, but it's like, is Poppy Hill, should I be saying Poppy Hill? Is Poppy Hill the antagonist? I still kind of, one of the things I like about Hill House, the book, is that it's like, no, it is just an evil house. And I've always felt about the show that it was just an evil house, but now we really have a very strong, like, it's Poppy Hill is antagonizing her. In fact, there's other ghosts in the house that are maybe not even aligned with Poppy Hill, who are, that's really interesting and kind of surprising to me, actually.
I'm glad you brought this up, because this is definitely one of the wrinkles I wanted to talk about in this episode. Is it is very simple to perhaps just say that Poppy, being a mother, is the personification of the house, and the house doing exactly what it wants to do to live, using the person that would be the most effective at doing it, certainly. But there is that wrinkle. There is that moment where we have the old woman that Clara took care of, who I think is this, I can't remember how she's related to Poppy, but she's related some way. Maybe this is one of Poppy's daughters. I can't remember. But she says she lies. Why? And so, we've just introduced this idea that perhaps the ghosts that inhabit this place are independent of the place itself, that have their own desires. They're like, they retain some vestige of who they were as a living person. And of course, the thing we learned last episode, that Poppy is clinically insane, that she is an insane woman, that would be just perfect catnip for a place like this that plays off of the people whose minds are a little bit different, right? And so that's a really interesting idea. That's a really interesting thought, because one of the things we have to look, if you will look back on episode 5, the bent neck lady, one of the things we specifically talked about is when Liv pushed her daughter off that railing with the noose around her neck. One of the things she said is, it's time to wake up. But she had this look of forlorn sadness on her, right? And we both clocked that. You definitely clocked that, because it was like, well, if this is just an evil house, like, springing its trap, why does she look sad? Why is she? And so the implication there perhaps is that this is still Olivia Crain in some way, shape, or form, and what she's doing is just picking up where the living Liv left off. She didn't accomplish her goal to do this to her 2 youngest children, and now as a ghost, she is going to pick up where she left off, probably with a lot of urging from Poppy. I mean, like, by the way, we don't have an answer to this question, and it's very possible we will never get an answer to this question definitively, but I do think it's such an interesting wrinkle that, I had that on one of my notes for, like, the big ideas I wanted to talk about, is like, is what we're seeing here the house, or is this just Poppy? Is this just Poppy Hill, insane ghost Poppy Hill, that is driving this? Because, I mean, there's certainly the moment at the end of the episode where all the ghosts are, like, observing what's going on in these wonderful creepy scenes, but, like, none of the other ghosts really messed with them at all, except, I mean, there was the basement ghost that, like, grabbed Luke, and I mean, William Hill just wanted his hat back. That's really all he wanted.
I don't know how seriously to take you, because it's entirely possible that, like, this show is actually saying, like, you took the man's hat, he wants his hat. It's not. That's entirely, I never thought about that,
I mean, he did, like, also bend down and lift up the bed and reach towards Luke. We never saw like the conclusion of that. We never saw what happened there, but so I am being a little tongue in cheek, but no, I mean, I think it's a really interesting idea to kind of ponder here, is that perhaps this is just a place of energy, dark or not, that feeds off of the people that live there, but reflects who those people are in certain ways.
Yeah, like, so you know, if you take Liv in the moment of her death, and you kind of just say that, okay, well, that's what Liv's ghost is it's a woman who is trapped forever in this moment of being terrified of losing her children, being tormented by these visions of her children dying, and thinking, due to some deluded web of dream logic, I have to wake them up. I have to wake them up from their nightmare so that I can keep them with me, keep them safe with me forever. And this leading her into manipulating them into their deaths, not out of malice, but out of just a twisted, broken, tragic mindset, basically. And maybe it's not the house at all, right? So just like with Poppy, it's like maybe that's just where she is, and she was broken by Poppy. And I still think that Mrs. Dudley is going to somehow come into things in the final episode, because she feels like an important, just in a plot sense of this being a story about, like, you know, action and consequence in a chain, sort of a chain of trauma. It's like, well, she was a participant in this chain of trauma, and it would feel strange to me if she just, like, didn't show up and we didn't address. I mean, it would feel very weird if we just didn't address this Abigail thing, now that Abigail has been introduced as a super important plot element. So I mean, at the very least, Abigail's ghost is going to be relevant when they all go to the house. Like, that's a fairly confident prediction.
The Dudley part of it is really interesting, for sure. Because, you know, going to the second conversation that Liv and Mrs. Dudley have in the episode, it's when Liv is kind of hanging out on the couch hiding, and Mrs. Dudley walks by, and she basically starts telling her that, like, you know, I have this feeling, this horrible feeling of terror that my children, like, I want to keep them safe. And by the way, like, the most heartbreaking part of this is like a very real, present feeling that people have about, like, the world is a scary place. The world is a terrifying place that, like, is gonna hurt you. It kills people. Like, it's just, and this real feeling of, I want to protect the people I love most from this thing. I think it's a real understandable feeling. And, like, you know, like, even, like, my kids are too young to really experience a lot of the complicated horribleness of the world. But even, like, my son's had a bad day at school today, and I'm like, oh man, like, he's sad. I don't like that. I don't want my kid to be sad. And just this feeling as a parent that you want to keep them safe from all these things. But ultimately you can't do that. Like, you have to, part of being a parent is learning to, when you have to let them go, and that your kid is going to probably go through heartbreak. They're going to get hurt. They're going, all these things that happen in life, they're going to have to happen to your children. There's no stopping it. So I found that really relatable. But the thing I wanted to talk about is Mrs. Dudley's reaction to what she's saying here, that Liv is like, you know, I'm really worried about my children. I'm just terrified. And Mrs. Dudley's reaction is basically like, if you're worried about your children, you don't let anybody tell you that you're wrong. Like, the world has teeth. Listen to your gut. Hold the door, even if it makes them hate you. Even if he does. We're talking about Hugh.
Even if it makes them hate you.
So, like, this is just, like, my reaction to this was like, Jesus, Mrs. Dudley. And like, let's be clear here. She is very understandably protecting her daughter from Hill House, but she's also kind of protecting her daughter from everything. Abigail lives in a house, a little tiny shack in the woods, and is never allowed to leave. And the only reason she's able to leave is she's very good at, like, sneaking out, is what Luke tells us.
Yeah.
So Mrs. Dudley, like, I think she, it's really interesting because in the moment she kind of just feeds into Liv's fear here, which helps push her towards the eventual thing that she does. And I don't think, like, I just think Mrs. Dudley is terrified of the house and is like, yeah, if you're feeling like your kids are unsafe, like, chase that feeling, because they are unsafe here. They are very unsafe here. But she doesn't quite understand what they're actually in danger from.
Yeah.
So, like, I just, like, she's not, Mrs. Dudley has been this character that we've been kind of going back and forth on, and I thought this was just a really interesting moment where we're like, oh, I don't know about that, Clara. I don't know about that philosophy actually.
I think in terms of just like setting up the character dynamics and the plot, that was bad advice, right? Because I mean, basically she is. I'm going to kind of repeat what you just said in a different way. Like she was super overprotective of her daughter. Mm-hmm. This led her daughter to rebel, as much as a little child like that of that age can rebel by sneaking out. It's unclear to me whether Abigail is even supposed to be in Hill House that night. I would lean toward she's not.
Oh, absolutely not. Like her parents did not want her to step one foot in Hill House at all.
Right.
At night, no. Yeah.
So the only reason, literally the reason the child is in Hill House and subsequently dies is directly because of her overprotectiveness and paranoia, right? It's I just as a factual matter of reality, like I don't think it benefits most people to tell them, if you feel a fear about something, you should super strongly overreact to that fear at all times. like especially when it comes to your children, what you just said, like your children are going to have to go out in the world and suffer in all kinds of ways, minor and major, inevitably. The idea that it's like you hold the door. So, okay, in this metaphor, holding the door means trying to protect them from all of the darkness and evil in the world.
Yeah.
Which is impossible.
Yeah.
You're going to fail.
Yep.
So I think that's bad advice, and I think it directly leads to her own daughter's death, which is super tragic. I mean, there's a lot of irony in both women's stories, in both Mrs. Dudley and Liv.
Yeah.
I keep calling her Mrs. Dudley. It's Clara. I think it's just because of the way that the book was. The book she's Mrs. Dudley. But both of them, there's a lot of irony where in both cases they lose their children directly as a consequence of their attempt to protect their children.
Yeah. Like, I don't know, for example, Mrs. Dudley, Clara, if you had just like told Liv the name of your daughter, then perhaps when your son kept talking about this imaginary friend that he said, can he come spend the night at my house? You would go, oh no, that's the daughter of our housekeeper and she's not allowed in the house. So no, she cannot spend the night. But I mean, isn't that an interesting point that like by necessity, what this means is neither Horace or Clara have ever said to anyone in the Crain family the name of their daughter, right? Like by necessity, because if they did, then it would be like, oh no, that's not an imaginary friend. That's just the girl that lives at the house. Like
exactly.
And like it's just it's the overprotected nature. It's like she's like it's I guess ironic in a wonderful way that Clara Dudley was the worst person to have this conversation with. I think the only person worse to have this conversation with is Poppy Hill.
Yeah.
And just like there's a moment where like there was a moment because it was established in the episode that when she's talking to her two children and then Nell starts talking to her about the bad dreams, which is just Mike Flanagan making these cute little kids say things like, and I put poison in my arm. And I was like, oh my God, these poor children.
I'm scared of the dark out there, that I put poison in me. I poisoned myself for years and years until my blood turns into poison, my body breaks down.
You send us out there into the dark, and the dark gets us. A piece at a time, over years and years and years, until I'm on a silver table with my jaw wired shut, and Luke is dead and cold on the floor.
But there was a moment where I thought, oh, is this not actually Clara Dudley? This is actually just the house fucking with Liv again? No, but this was Clara.
Yeah.
This just was. So
I think we already know that the house preyed on her when she spent time in the house and lived in the house.
Yeah.
So like I think she just has the same predisposition and the same vulnerabilities that the house / Poppy prey on and inflame, exaggerate, right? Like she Mrs. Dudley as a character, Clara, like she is this background character who in many ways we have and I think narratively a lot of things have depended on her that were not clear at the time. You know, like her
Mm-hmm.
finding Nell's body, for example, is interesting because we never see the old version of her character. It's like, I don't know if it's obvious why that's interesting to me, but it's like, well, it feels like kind of an exception. Like, why didn't we have that scene where we saw her on the phone? Like, because it's like everybody else has been recast.
Yeah.
She still lives by the house. They're going to the house.
Mm-hmm.
She's an important character. Am I going to predict that we see her at the house in episode 10? I think I will. I think I'll predict that.
Okay.
Whether she's recast or she'll probably be recast because everybody else has been recast. It would be kind of interesting and unusual if there was like one exception where they just had one character who had old age makeup, you know?
Yeah. I mean, like she's pretty pivotal to the show because she kind of has served, at least in the back half of the show, as the way to give us history of the house. She's who introduces us to William Hill. She introduces us to Poppy. Like how we know about the previous tenants of the house is through Clara. So like she serves an important role in that way. And you know, you go back and you listen to our conversation about these 9 episodes. Every moment that she shows up is a moment like tinged with something that you're not sure what to do with. Like, right, we talked about this with when she sees Luke messing with the dumbwaiter. She's very like on him immediately, to the point where like Theo, I think it's Theo. Yeah. Theo like kind of gets in her face and be like, you don't talk to him that way. And so like, it is really interesting. We framed this woman in this very specific way throughout the course of the show, that she's always kind of there for the children to talk to, but she's very severe. She's very strict. There's not a lot of warmth to her, at least from what we've seen with the characters. And like, that's what makes this sequence so interesting to me, because like, I think she is relating to what Liv is going through in a specific way that I think ironically brings a little bit of warmth into the character, that she's like, yeah, no, I love my child too. I'm terrified of bad things are going to happen to my child, but there's still just that tinge to it. That I find so interesting.
It's a sort of insane level of intensity, right? Where it's like the fear of losing the children, the fear of the children being hurt is so strong that there's not even any like palpable love for the children. It's just fear.
Yeah.
I just had a transient thought that I wanted to share, even though I don't think it's true at all, because what I'll say is, if we didn't have the fact that Mrs. Dudley called to tell them that she found Nell's body, I would be saying to you right now that Mrs. Dudley is a ghost, because like the fact that she dresses old timey and the fact that she kind of has this weird intensity, and but that's one of the things that kind of stands out to you about her, is she just seems off in so many ways in all of those scenes, even when she's kind of being like positive and supportive and trying to protect people, and it's just this joyless intensity about her, I guess.
Yeah, which I think pretty perfectly matches the depiction of Mrs. Dudley in the book, right? Like this is like, I think this character is definitely more complex than the book character was, just because like we just saw very, very, very little of her in the book, in ways that I enjoy, but definitely still matches that type of character that we saw in the novel.
Yeah, part of me is surprised at how much we're talking about this character, but part of me is not, because it's there's a sort of skeleton key unlock thing that happened where it's like a mystery in plain sight. Was like, why are we spending so much time on this character of Mrs. Dudley? And then it becomes incredibly relevant here at almost at the end of the show, why she's been here this whole time, and the unseen implications of her character's role in the story.
Yeah. I do want to spend a little bit of time on Poppy Hill as well. So I think we should just say hello, Katie Parker. We've come full circle, Matt. Katie Parker, who was the lead of the very first movie we covered on this podcast, Mike Flanagan's first feature film. She's back here to play Poppy Hill. And Poppy Hill's such an interesting character, Matt, because in a lot of ways, she's like, it's like she's in a different show a little bit. Like, she is very much like wearing this 20s flapper outfit, and she's talking like character, like an exaggerated version of characters from the 20s. Like the line that stuck out to me was like the elephant's eyebrows, like the bee's knees, the cat's pajamas. But no, Poppy's gonna say the elephant's eyebrows, which is just perfect. So she's like really leaning into this affect in a way that really stands out to you, that makes her seem like, even as Liv is like falling for the manipulation that she's successfully doing to her, there's something so otherworldly about the way she talks, the way she moves, the way she interacts, like the way she floats through the scene. Man, I'm really fascinated by her. And again, like the question of, is she the house or isn't she?
Yeah, we definitely need to talk about her quite a lot. I mean, so we've seen ghosts plenty in this show, but this is definitely the first time that the ghost felt like, an agent with a plan.
Yeah.
Instead of just being sort of a revenant who is stumbling around, or you accidentally kind of push one of its buttons, and so now you've got its attention. But I'm thinking of the bowler hat man and the basement ghost specifically here, or like the the clock fixing ghost, who, as far as we can tell, literally all he does is sit there and work on the clock, right?
Oh, but he returned in this episode 2 times.
Yeah.
And man, like, just he's sitting there working on the clock, and Liv walks by, and he just kind of looks at her over the top of his glasses.
Yeah.
And then the second time she walks by, he's just like, he's not even working on the clock now. He's just standing next to the clock, just looking at her. And it's just the perfect amount of discomfort and menace to a guy that's just, I'm the fixing the clock ghost. That's what I do.
Yeah. So in contrast, Poppy is aggressive, manipulative,
motivated. Yeah.
It's interesting because part of it is that she's manipulative. Part of it is that I think she actually believes what she's saying. Maybe I'm wrong. It could be pure manipulation, but part of it is she's like, so I guess the specific thing I want to argue is, like, she talks about the screaming Meemies. She talks about having this dream where her children died, and my interpretation is just like, oh, that's what actually happened. Her children died.
Yeah. Well, she killed them,
Yeah.
right? Like,
yeah,
at least one of them. Like, the idea that it was just a dream and they woke up, like, that's the language for killing them.
Right.
I dreamed I held her little hand and sat at her side, and it took days, weeks. It took weeks for her to quit gulping that watery air, quit gaping at me like a fish on the beach, but finally she did. She breathed, ragged and hard, and she went stiff, and one of her eyes turned red as blood, and she'd shake. She'd shake so bad the bed would shake, and when she started shaking, it went fast. She dangled. She died.
Yes. So that's I mean, I think it was fairly clear. I just was making sure that it was that you agree with me there.
Yes.
So in her, I think in her ghost mind, that's how she sees the situation. Like, she doesn't, Poppy Hill ghost doesn't think I murdered my children. She thinks kind of what she's persuading Liv into thinking. Like, you can keep them with you forever. You can protect them forever from all of the harm of the world by just keeping them in this house with us, and everything's going to be great. And especially, you mix in this thing where there's like the dream logic of it all, where Liv kind of thinks she's dreaming. Unclear how much that's actually, how much she actually thinks she's dreaming, but yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, one thing I wanted to talk about with that is we get the moment where she walks into her reading room and is instead in Shirley's morgue, seeing the dead body of her full-grown daughter, and it's like, is this the house showing her this? Because, I mean, this is, to me, just like Liv has superpowers, right?
Mhm.
Like the Crain women especially have extrasensory perception. We know this, it's been established. And so like this could just be Liv seeing the future, right? Because it's not as if the house just gives her a unspecific vision of her daughter's death. It's the death. It's the like it's what actually happens. Now the Luke of it all complicates this, right? Because as far as we know, up until right now, Luke has not shot some heroin into his arm and overdosed and died.
Mhm.
But we did see him get grabbed by Poppy at the very end of the last episode. But so I mean that is really interesting, and that like it would be one thing, and this kind of goes back to the whole question of like, is this the house, is this Poppy, like what's going on here, that like it is very possible that this is just a place in which Liv's natural gifts are kind of uh attenuated and enhanced to the point where she is just in the middle of this dreamy daze of like kind of becoming untethered. Just her power gives her a glimpse of the future, and what she sees in the future is her dead child. And yes, you pointed out the irony of the fact that in attempting to keep that future from happening, she causes it. But I don't know, I just find that really interesting, that like this is just like she's haunted by the ghosts of her future children's death.
Yeah.
But that doesn't have to be the house. That could just be her.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it is interesting that it's this sort of, I forget the name of the like paradox here, if it's like an Oedipus paradox or whatever, where like the prophecy is what leads you into doing the action, right? But
Mm-hmm.
that is what it is. I agree with you though that it's not obviously the house messing with her. It could be her own just pure premonition. The whole I mean Luke it's so interesting and weird because like Luke injecting himself with heroin in episode 10.
How would it work?
How would it work narratively, like chronologically, I mean, we would I guess it's, anything is possible. It's fiction. You can do things with skipping time or whatever. I don't know. She causes her own children's death by trying to prevent it. That's the point. And um the interesting thing about the scene, I don't know. I was thinking about the fact that Shirley walks into the morgue and sees the Liv ghost in the morgue, which in my mind tied in with this scene where Liv also saw the morgue, right? But it's interesting. I guess what jumped out to me about it is it's not like it was the same scene, right? It's not like it's not like Shirley walks in and it's like, no, these are two different things.
No, we're not doing the bent neck lady thing. No.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not doing like time travel, right? We're not, which I know it's not time travel. I don't know. I'm probably being overly literal with some of these things, but sometimes the show does give us like a very the bent neck lady thing was a pretty literal, like, oh, she's literally tormented by the vision of her own death. Like that's so. Sometimes I'm just expecting things that aren't quite as straightforward as that.
Sure. I have to say, while we're on the scene in the morgue, there's been a lot of disturbing images and events that happened over the course of these 9 episodes. I think Victoria Pedretti's Nell sitting up and then trying to say mommy and then having to grab some wire cutters and cut the wire that has wired her jaw shut so she can cry out mommy got me in a very specific way that I was not ready for.
Yeah. There was a lot of hair standing up all over my body in this episode.
Yeah.
I think that I was just thinking like this episode affected me a lot more than I thought it would, considering I sort of thought I knew what I was getting into, right? Like you've watched eight episodes of the show, you basically think you know what's going to happen, but it still manages to really twist the knife.
Yeah. Well, especially like I think one of the most emotionally affecting moments to me is Liv has watched her husband escape the house with her children, and she returns to the red room. She sees Abigail on the floor dead, and you see Liv kind of the haze clears for a bit, and she fully comprehends and realizes what she's done.
Mm-hmm.
And she has this moment of like, oh God, what have I done? And like we're almost there to her like coming to her senses, and then she turns around and sees the ghost of Abigail standing there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, good, you woke up, it worked. And you're just like, it's just heartbreaking moment of like, no.
Mm-hmm.
And then it of course leads to her jumping off the which, man, plenty of ways to kill yourself. That's a real rough. It's a real rough way to do it.
A 40-foot fall, right? Where you're just like, I wouldn't bet on that killing me necessarily.
Yeah.
Also,
and even if it does, you're probably not going to die right away. So you're going to be on the ground twitching and slowly bleeding out and dying.
Which is what we see happening.
Yes.
Which also, just to say it, is the exact same spot where Nell hangs herself from.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. I mean, in a lot of ways, there's a lot of echoing of the Bent Neck Lady episode here, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the one thing that I was looking forward to talking to you about is when Liv leaves to go see her sister, and then doesn't really leave. The hotel room that she's staying in is the exact hotel room that Nell stayed in the night before she went back to Hill House.
Yep.
It's the same room. They're on the same bed. It's been updated for the present time, but it's the same.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, there's a lot of echoing and cyclical natures here that we're getting demonstrated to us.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's sad. It's really sad. By the way, speaking of the cab she takes to the airport, but not really the airport, 90% sure. No, I'll say 99% sure. The cab driver that puts her suitcase in the back of the car is Mike Flanagan.
Okay.
Like go back and watch it.
Okay.
I'm 99% sure that's just Mike. It really, really, really looks like him.
Okay.
I noticed that on my third watch, and I had a good chuckle to myself.
Okay, I didn't notice, but that's great.
Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about Hugh a little bit here, Matt, because I think we've been kind of wrestling with the question of Hugh the last few episodes of like how much of this was his fault, should he have done more, those kind of questions, and I think his kind of role in this episode is really interesting to me because we have a conversation we hadn't seen before, which is the conversation he has with her right after she punches a hole in the mirror. Or I think that's was but like I like this idea of you're tired, you're stressed, the flip, like he's kind of desperately trying to find an excuse for why she's been behaving this way. And then she just kind of comes completely clean with him. I love that line. I was, when we first got here, I was all the things, I was all the colors. And I think that ties back to her color storms, right? Like she had these very bad migraines and they were color storms, but in Hill House, it's just been blackness. And it's like, I was all the things, I was all the emotions, I was all of it. And now I'm just one thing, fear. And I appreciate in that moment that he says, I think Monday is probably too long to wait. So like in the ongoing conversation of should Hugh have done more, like yada, yada, yada. I think we see moments where Hugh is kind of like, there's moments where Hugh's trying to explain away. I also found it really interesting. There's an earlier conversation as well where she's talking about the dream she had about her children dying. And she's kind of trying to tell him how fucked up this is and how messed up this is making her and how kind of muddled she is. And he turns the conversation into a conversation about, oh yeah, me too. Because like what happened to my hand. And like the way I phrased that made it seem like I was like admonishing him for it. I actually think what he was doing in that moment was trying to show her that she's not alone in these feelings, that he's feeling that way too. But it is interesting. It kind of just completely pivots the conversation away from what's going on with her to him sticking his hand in a fan.
Yeah. And his concerns about his relationship with Steve and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I don't remember if it's in this same conversation or not, but there's the moment when she says, like, I'm worried there might be something really wrong with me.
Yeah.
And we talked about this, I think, last time, or at least we talked about it previously. Just the fact that you really never want to believe that. You're very humans are masters at self-deception. We do it so much more than we want to admit.
Mhm.
And you really don't want to face up to the possibility that your spouse is severely mentally ill or something, right?
Yeah.
But the way that you go about the not facing up to it isn't by saying, I'm going to choose to not face up to this. What you do is you just like distort the situation in your mind so that it's actually fine, and it's actually just you're stressed. It's actually just there's black mold. It's actually just you know any number of excuses that you could make in order to not have to face this terrifying, painful possibility. And I don't even particularly hold it against Hugh, right? Because like you just said, he does actually say, hey, maybe, he listens to Mr. Dudley. He says, okay, maybe, despite the fact that this feels kind of scary, it's like, yeah, maybe you need to get away from the house. Maybe you need to get away from the house sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think that just adds to the tragedy, by the way, that they were just so close. Like they were this close to getting her out of that house before it had finally, broken her. Although you could argue maybe maybe even that is overly optimistic because it still manages to get the Korean children decades later.
Yeah.
So I think
maybe drive her to the airport, Hugh. Maybe just like don't bring Mike Flanagan in his cab up here to drive you, and just drive her yourself.
It's so poetic that it would be Mike Flanagan because he loves this. I was going to make this meta point at some point, but like we like to draw out like the patterns of the types of stories that Flanagan likes to tell, and one of the things that he does with a lot of his supernatural stories is like, once you have become entangled with the supernatural thing, you're fucked.
Yeah.
Like you think you understand the rules, like in Oculus. Nope, you're fucked. You think you're gonna bargain your way out of it, or you think you're gonna escape it, like in Absentia. Nope, you're fucked. There's no these things are bigger and stronger and more dangerous than you think, and you're a bug in their web, and that's
yeah. Would you say that there are more things on heaven and earth, Horatio, that can be understand in your philosophy?
I would.
Yeah.
I also notice a similarity with Absentia, which is that in Absentia we have the moment where like the character has become a Christian and she's praying. That doesn't save her.
Nope.
And then in this episode, Mrs. Dudley gives this, rather sweet speech where she's like, I'll say some extra prayers for you tonight. That sure doesn't save anybody,
Cool,
so,
thanks.
Yeah.
That's helpful. Yeah. I think you're right. Absolutely. That like this we are kind of forced to like stand in awe of the power of things we can't possibly understand.
Mm-hmm.
And that's this house, right? Like, I think that's one thing that is reflected in Hugh's reaction to it in last week's episode, right? Is like, even the idea of like the idea of trying to burn it down is like, you can't do that. It's not going to let you do that. And that's we didn't even talk in last week's episode about the final Luke moment. It was really quick and there wasn't a lot to do with it, so we just didn't talk about it. But yeah, he covers the whole thing with gasoline, drops a lighter, and nothing.
Yeah,
nothing.
Whoosh, and then that's it. Yeah,
which is like, it's just like almost more cruel than it just landing and not doing lighting, but just the idea that it just lit and just like, yeah. I mean, I think you're absolutely right that the unknowable, ununderstandable forces at play behind the scenes in our world are not to be trifled with, for sure. I mean, that's Ouija as well, right? No, it's absolutely a through line in all this stuff,
which doesn't bode well for our expectations for episode 10.
No, it does not. But we'll see.
We will see. I was thinking, well, yes, we will see. But I did want to take a moment somewhere in this episode to talk about episode 10, because this is episode 9. Episode 10 is the last episode. I'm sure it's going to be a great, super satisfying finale that I'm going to love. From where I'm sitting right now, I'm like, man, how are you going to fit a resolution to this in one single episode? One possibility is that it just ends horribly for everyone, and it's kind of an abrupt, horrible ending. That would make it a short episode, sure. I don't know. I just wanted to pause briefly, and I know what's going to happen, so this is really just kind of me being indulgent and trying to think like where do I think we're going with this? I think
yeah. Do you have any specific predictions on how things are going to play out?
Well, I think all the Crain children and Hugh are going to converge on the house. They may not all get there at the same time, but they're all going to end up in the house, which will allow them to sort of like stand together. That they don't have the power of 7, though; they only have 5. So that gives us a feeling of uncertainty. Like, well, this might not work. There's no guarantee that would have worked in the first place. By the way, just
yeah.
Well,
and I think furthermore that their antagonist is their mother.
Yeah. They don't know what they're getting into. Even Hugh doesn't know what he's getting into. He doesn't really understand. And I think Abigail is going to come into play in some way. Like if there's going to be a kind of like last minute catastrophe, it's probably going to involve Abigail or just some kind of thing that comes in that actually helps them. I think that Mrs. Dudley is going to make an appearance. And then as for whether the show ends up on a high note or a low note, Mike Flanagan sure does love his low notes. But I don't know. I'm an optimist.
Yeah. So are you leaning towards the show ends hopefully or negatively? I mean, if it's aligning with the book, right? There's an argument to be made that the book does not end on a hopeful, happy note.
Yeah, the book certainly ends on a low note. I think so this is an argument that I'm not sure if I buy, but like there's sort of a science of like what shape an arc of a plot should be. I'm sort of referencing this like famous Kurt Vonnegut speech where he talks about like you can have the character go up and up and up and then go down and down and down, or you can have them go down and down and down and then up and up and up, or you can have all these shapes, but like point being you kind of can't just have them go down and 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 down. That's not really I'm not saying that's not a story, but like that there's a reason people don't usually do that, and it's that people are pissed off when you do that to them. They're like, what was the point of this, right? So this has been a show that's been a lot of gut punches, and it would feel very bad for it to end just with a big final fuck you gut punch. But so here's why I'm not convinced by my own argument is like that's absentia. So that's Oculus. So I'm not sure that Mike Flanagan necessarily has internalized the Kurt Vonnegut speech.
Yeah, I mean, we will definitely revisit this conversation next week for sure. I can't really say anything.
I know. I think I'm just going to guess though that it is more positive, some kind of redemption, some kind of maybe not like a happy ending per se, but something where like some kernel of positivity is retained.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we will certainly find out. I did in that conversation. I said the words "live" as the antagonist, and I wanted to kind of zoom in on that real quick with you.
Sure.
because I think this is a really interesting wrinkle that we have to do kind of almost entirely in this episode, where we have to start pushing the audience towards this realization that, hey, like, we knew Liv went crazy in the house and killed herself. We didn't know she murdered a child. We didn't know that, like we knew that she was the one beckoning them back to the house, and we knew that she was the one that killed Nell. But I think we were operating with the assumption that, hey, this is just the evil house. The evil house is doing this. We weren't fully aware of Olivia Crain, even the living Olivia Crain, and her role in everything that happens. And I think it's like, if you go back and look at the show, there's a lot of little clues towards this. Like, one thing that I really picked up on in the Bent Neck Lady episode is when she's talking to Nell about the locket that has Luke and her pictures in it. She says, "I can keep you in here safe forever." And that's the thing she says at the beginning of this episode is, I just want to, when she's laying there on the couch with them on her arms, she says that she just wants to freeze them and keep them like that forever. And it's laying all these seeds. I also think there's this really interesting touch, Matt. I don't know if you're going to agree with me on it, because like I freeze framed it for my wife and she was like, maybe. But like, the opening of the episode is she's on the couch. She's got the two kids on her arms. Hugh wakes her up and she opens her eyes and looks at Hugh. And Carla Gugino does this thing where, like, for like a fraction of a second, her face took on this menace to it. Like, it's kind of like, it's this thing where, like, you're sleeping and you're in the middle of a dream and you like wake up and you're not like, you haven't like contorted your face to the appropriate reaction to seeing, for example, your loved one sitting in front of you. And it's not like she doesn't like furrow her brow or anything like that dramatic. It's just like this look of like kind of resting menace face. And then it's like, it's just like a fraction of a second, but it was just long enough to where I was like, oh, that's actually, I got a little chills there actually. And I think, I mean, my interpretation of this is that was intentional. That was an intentional choice by both actor and director, to start painting this picture of, we want to see this woman from the perspective of, oh, we should maybe be afraid of her. I mean, afraid for her, certainly, but afraid of her as well. Because that's one of the reveals of the night, is that when Steve and his father are sitting in his room, like waiting and about to decide when they make a run for it, and we see the doorknob slowly turn, the assumption for 9 episodes was that was a ghost on the other side of that door. No, that was just Olivia.
Yeah, just flesh and blood.
Yeah,
I mean, I agree with you broadly that like that first scene with her with the kids, she's holding the 2 younger kids. It's very, it's there's this strong undercurrent, this strong sinister undercurrent to it, and it feels otherworldly and kind of, like you said, it's priming us for what we're going to see in this episode, which is her getting more sucked into this delusion that she's going to keep her kids with her forever, literally.
Yeah.
I love the touch where, gosh, it's so cool actually. I'm glad I remembered so we could talk about it. Is like, she's talking, she's kind of giving a little monologue, and the camera is pushing in on her face, and we don't see the 2 kids that are laying on her, and then it's like she kind of snaps out of it, and Hugh has picked up, I think, Nell.
Luke. It's Luke.
Okay, yeah.
The one that's not dead.
Yeah, the one that's not dead. That makes sense because she's keeping Nell with her, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because she had said to him like, "No, you don't need to help me. I'll bring them up," and he has snatched one of them away from her.
Yeah.
In her perception, from her perspective, in his perspective, he's just helping her carry a kid upstairs. In her perspective, her husband has just snatched one of the children away when she wasn't paying attention, and she's very startled by this. She's very upset by this. I bet you that, like, direction wise, they told okay, so I'm speaking specifically the way he's holding Luke. Luke looks dead. the little boy is like, his head is lolling back.
Yeah,
he's
right.
limp. And he's in, like, when you carry a sleeping kid, you support their neck in a very specific way, and he's very much not doing that. it struck me as like the imagery of this is that Hugh is carrying away your child and your child looks dead, and this is upsetting and disconcerting.
No, you're so right. I actually have it up here on my other monitor, and I'm watching it as you're talking just to confirm this. And you're 100% right. He's not supporting his head at all. His head is lolling. Yeah. One other detail I really love about that scene is the way she kind of snaps into realizing that Luke's not there anymore. Is Hugh says to her, "Is your arm asleep?" And it's because he's taken the kid, but her arm has remained in the exact same position because in her mind she's supporting her son with it. And it's just like it adds to the creepiness of the discongruity in what he's seeing and what she's experiencing. And again, this is like we're building this. We start subtly and slow with this, and we started episodes ago, right, with her kind of the not seeing things or kind of losing track of time, and now we're establishing this again early in this episode, and then we're just going to really go full tilt with it. I love that we also get to see both the moment of both moments with Steve that we saw last episode, the moment where she's standing in the twins room talking to them when they're not there, and then the moment why she punched the vanity, of course, because she saw the corpses of her two children as adults looking back at her. Again, context, right? We're getting to see the other a new perspective and a new context on all that we saw from Steve.
Yeah. And I think as with the other episodes where we got a deep dive episode into that character, we understand Olivia, we empathize with her, but we also have, I don't know, we feel slightly more complex. We feel more complex about her because we didn't know that she killed a child. There's some mitigating circumstances about her, being psychically preyed on by an evil house and manipulated by a ghost and et cetera, but it's still, it gives us much more mixed feelings than just simply like, okay, well, the house bullied her into suicide. It's like, no, she was an active participant in this. Yes, she was like delusional. Yes, she was manipulated, but she went downstairs and got rat poison and put it in the tea for her children.
Yeah.
She thought she was in a dream. Okay. I wouldn't put rat poison in my children's tea in a dream either. Like she was somewhere on the spectrum of like being broken at that point, and that's how she died. So
yeah, I really do like the detail too. When she jumps, Poppy is there over her shoulder, and we do this really interesting like insert cut where Poppy is moving to push her, but Poppy does not actually ever come in contact with her. She does not actually push her, and I think that is different from the way she pushed her daughter. Like if I'm remembering correctly, I think I am, but Liv pushed Nell off the banister.
I don't remember.
And here, I think you could say the push is like a psychic push if you wanted to make that argument. But I do think like it just the fact that the camera zooms in on it and shows us specifically that Poppy reaches out to give her the little oomph, but she never actually physically touches her. To just make it clear that on some level this was Liv choosing to jump.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like Poppy rubbing it in. Like, I don't even need to push you. I've already wound you up just the way I want you.
Yep. Man. Some things I did want to point out, by the way. The book Liv is reading in her reading room is a book called The Fifth Child. It is a gothic horror novel by Doris Lessing. It came out in 1988. I've never read it, but I think it's a fun book to pick, given the title. The Cranes have 5 children, and it's the 5th child. I looked at the summary of this book, and I don't think it lines up specifically what we're doing here, because the book is about 2 parents that have 4 children and created this like idyllic domestic storybook situation. They have a 5th child, and it's like this monstrous goblin like nightmare child. And that's not really what what's going on here. Although perhaps they ultimately kill the child in the end. Again, I haven't read the book, but I think this was a very apt pick here. Just some great detail work, I think, in the, because you barely see the cover. I had to like freeze frame and to really get it.
Mm-hmm. Well, in this, I mean, Nell would be the fifth child, right? And the show is sort of about Nell centrally. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a fun connection there. I like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I also, did you notice on the fridge when Liv is getting water for her migraine medicine, the fridge spells, it has Luke in fridge magnets, and then down, like intersecting with it, is Doug. It's like, who's Doug? But I actually think one thing the show did is it's D-O, and then the U from Luke is spelling the U from Doug, and then there's an M slightly further down.
Uh-huh.
And what it kind of does, if you want to possibly read into this, is if you squint, the G from far away could look like another O.
Uh-huh.
And so what it basically spells is going down. If you skip the U, it spells doom.
Uh-huh.
And then Luke is like right in the middle of the word doom. He's intersecting the word doom, which is fun. I don't like, who knows? Like, this is probably just someone on the set was named Doug and they were just fucking around with the fridge magnets.
I was going to joke that it was somebody on the set, but I like to assume things are intentional. I know we both do. So
yeah,
I think that's fun. The doom, I didn't think of that, but in my mental picture, I can see what you're talking about. And I like that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Fun stuff. Man, I feel like there's so much more I want to talk about, but it is all contingent on everything that's about to happen in episode 10. So I think one thing I do want to talk about is the choice that this episode did on how it ends, right? We have the moment Liv jumps, lands, similar to the way we sit there with the hanging Nell as she hangs back and forth silently. We hold on the corpse of Liv, still kind of twitching on the floor, and then the camera slowly moves through Hill House. We eventually get to the front door, and then bam, the door opens, and what is it? It's the first day the Crains move into the house, and it's this like real, it's just the juxtaposition is super jarring here as we see the family happy, excited, nervous. And then how do we end? We end with them all running upstairs. Hugh follows them and says, you going to join us? And she says,
are you sure?
Go on without me. You guys go on without me.
You guys go on without me.
And
Hugh says, how could we?
Yeah.
And then credits. It's like, fuck you. Fuck you. Turning the screw. Or sorry, the knife.
Yeah.
The screw. The turn of the screw is the next haunting we're going to be covering.
Okay. No, I love that. I also just simply love that as the children are running upstairs, he's like yelling after them. We already assigned your bedrooms. Don't decide you like a bedroom. We already that's absolutely the thing that a father would be thinking in that moment.
Yeah. It's this perfect little like just idyllic family bliss that like we know that they're going to be robbed from forever now. No matter what way this goes, right? Like she's dead.
Yeah.
Nell is dead. They're not coming back.
Yeah.
So maybe our characters all get out of this, and maybe they get out of this, and like you said, like you're pleading that we have a hopeful, positive ending of this whole thing. That these remaining 5 people all make it out of this thing alive, and find a way to reconnect and take steps to improve their lives. Hopefully.
Yeah.
But even so, this idyllic family scene that we see at the cap of this episode, is gone, and it's not coming back ever.
Yeah. I think, right. Like you can't have like a purely happy ending because
it's a sad story.
This is literally like the day after the day of their sister's funeral. It's already sad.
Yeah.
The question is it going to be sadder? Are they going to defeat the evil? Are they going to Are they going to escape the evil? Maybe. I don't think you defeat Hill House. I think the idea that Hill House and its straight walls and its floorboards is going to continue to exist at the end of this episode. I'm fairly certain Hill House isn't going anywhere. To me, the only question is, does the Crain family escape from Hill House?
Mm.
We'll see.
I can't wait. I can't wait, Matt. What I can tell you is I love the last episode of the show. I love it. It has one of my favorite monologues of all time in it, and it's a great episode of television. Now take that for whatever.
Okay.
Can we, before we end, like, let's do 5 minutes on Carla Gugino, who is just absolutely incredible. I mean, we said as much in our Gerald's Game coverage, so like this is not news to us or anyone listening to this podcast, but holy shit, man.
Yeah.
She is like, this episode asks so much of her, and like from the first moment to the last, it's all her. And
there's kind of another gear here, or maybe what I mean to say is like there's a huge range. There's a huge amount of nuance. There's it's just such a dynamic performance. And again, I mean, you basically just said this, but like we're taking her from almost like the beginning of her just barely beginning to lose her grip on things, all the way through to she's completely lost her grip, she's broken, and you buy the entire transformation. Like I find that's often a thing that isn't pulled off correctly in stories, so I think it gets bonus points even because you know what I mean. Like there's so many stories that are about like the downfall of a character, and for whatever reason, very often you just don't buy it because it's just like that doesn't seem like a human choice. And sometimes it's the performance, sometimes it's that the story itself kind of goes too fast. But this was one instance where I was almost like chilled by how much I did believe it, because that when you believe it, that means you can kind of relate to it, which is uncomfortable. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of line reads that just really stood out to me here. Like, and I don't even, I'm gonna talk to you about these. I don't even know why, but like the monologue we already talked about with the raining stones, for some reason, the way she says, like, when one of the stones breaks through the window and lands in the house, and the way she just says right there on the carpet. It was about this big. I don't even know what it was about that, but it's just like she just like channeled something in that moment to me. Like, and it's like you can kind of see the one thing I love about that monologue so much is you can almost see in her performance how she is being transported back to that moment, that she is not just relaying this information to us and to Clara, but she is reliving this all of it. Which is this. We didn't really talk about this, but this is kind of this very important like moment for Olivia that we didn't know about, that her father died when she was 12 in a car accident, that she also lost a parent as a kid. And she says talking about how she's hated storms since she was a kid, and part of it is because of this moment, but she says the line, quote, "I guess it's all about how we feel when we're young. Doesn't ever really change." And is that not like a perfect like thematic through line of this entire show, of that these five kids went through this thing and had this feeling and this experience when they were young, and that never goes away, and like that doesn't really change, that is this defining aspect of who you are as a person, and that's just true for all five of the Crains.
Yeah, I mean, that plays really interestingly with this idea that she wants to freeze them the way they are so that they will never be hurt.
Yeah.
When, if anything, what she actually does is she freezes them the way they are in a way that makes their hurt extreme and permanent, by traumatizing them.
I mean, that is like, yes, yes, Nell had a broken heart, right? Yes,
Mhm.
she went through all this horrible stuff. Yes, all the darkness of the world that Olivia feared Nell would have to experience, she did indeed experience. But by doing what you did to her, Liv, we see that the consequence of that is Nell has to relive the worst moments of her life over and over and over and over again, right? That
Mhm.
she's stuck in this like flying through her life to all the worst, most terrible moments in the moments before she dies. And that's way worse, actually. Olivia, good job. Good job.
Yep. You just reminded me of what, as we're wrapping up, one more prediction that I will make, and maybe it's just obvious, is like, well, Nell will also be in the house, right? So Liv is in the house, Nell's in the house, Abigail is in the house. These are just more ghosts that are in that house now, so they're gonna play a role.
Yeah, that makes sense. Another thing I wanted to say earlier and I forgot was, talking about kind of going back to the Dudley and Liv conversation, and the bad advice that Mrs. Dudley gives her, the concept of holding the door, right? That phrase really pinged off of me specifically because in episode 8, that is exactly what Hugh said he was doing, right? By keeping what happened in that house that night from the children, he was holding the door shut because there were monsters on the other side of it. So he is in essence doing what Clara is telling Liv to do, and what Liv is ultimately trying to do is keep all the bad things, all the bad truths of the world away from his kids. And this is the perfect example of why, Olivia, that doesn't work. Like, he made it worse. He made it worse for all of them. And that he's come to realize that now, that by withholding all these things from his children their entire life, he prevented them from ever moving past it, or dealing with it, or understanding it, or anything.
I love that. I spaced on the fact that he said those words, but yeah, we're all learning the lesson that you can't and shouldn't try to protect your children from the world forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so sad.
Yeah,
I mean, just to hit the point one last time before we wrap up, like, the most relatable emotion and experience in the world is fear over your child getting hurt. Like, if you are a parent, this is something that you deal with every single day. The fear and anxiety of what is going to hurt my kids today. Like, I'm not saying it's like an all consuming thing. It's not, but there's always some level of it, right? There's always some backgrounded, my kid's going to get hurt. My kid's going to experience pain. Like, all these things is like we've all gone through shit in our lives, and knowing that our kids are going to have to go through that. Like, the first time someone makes my kid feel not wanted or not accepted or like outcast, like, that's going to break my heart.
Yeah.
And it's going to happen.
Yeah.
There's nothing that we can do.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I've experienced so many of these things. Just like your kids go to school, they go off and they have a life, without you, essentially, and you see the impact that things have on them, and there's nothing you can do about it, and it definitely does wear on you, I guess. Like, it's, but at the same time, you want to protect them from it, right? But you also know that you can't, and maybe shouldn't, right? I actually think, I mean, I'm repeating myself a little bit, but like, the impulse to try to protect him is simultaneously totally understandable and relatable, and also kind of something you need to grow out of as a parent.
Yeah.
Because your job is to raise them to adulthood, where they just leave and go live their own lives, and and they're beyond your grasp completely.
Liv even says this. She goes, I always used to think it was my job to repair them for the world out there. And then Claire's like, no, fuck that.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah. Great stuff for sure. What do you think about the concept that, essentially Olivia sees her two youngest children as the babies of the family, and those are the ones that she needs to protect, and the rest of them she's like, nah, that's too late. Like, I actually love the interaction with Shirley in the kitchen the night of, where she's like, are you dreaming? Nah, you're too old. What she says to her is kittens need their mommy, and then one day they don't.
Yeah.
Which is a great callback to Shirley's whole thing being the horrible dead kittens in episode 2. But I do think this is this really interesting thing where she's focused on just the two youngest kids because they are still innocent. The world has not affected them. The older kids they're too grown up. They can't save them from the world anymore.
Yeah. That is interesting. I mean, I think it's just realistic that whatever child is the youngest you do see as the baby. I mean, I fell victim to this despite not, thinking like I'm not going to be one of those parents who treats their youngest child differently because they're the littlest one. And it's like, no, I definitely still do, probably always will. And in this case, it's I just think it's realistic too. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I fall in the trap. I only have 2, but I fall in the trap of like, I feel like I treat my son older than the age he is because in comparison to his sister, and then I treat her younger than the age she is because it's comparison to him. Like,
right.
I'm starting to get to the point with my daughter that I'm like, I remember when my son was this age, and I felt like in my eyes he was so much more grown up.
Yeah.
Than I feel like in my eyes she is.
This is one of those things I don't want to say regret, that's a strong word, but I wish I could just like pass this message along to my past self that like with my first child, I was so excited for her to be, grown up and someone I could just like talk to and like share thoughts with, and that I almost like kind of like rushed her into like grow up so we can play together. And then the youngest, in contrast, I'm like, she's the baby is disappearing. She's transforming into a toddler. No, stop. And it's like a completely different, like it's like the opposite impulse. Like I wanted the first one to grow up faster, and I want the younger one to grow up slower.
Yeah.
And both of these are not things I should be doing. I'm being a little bit too hard on myself. I don't think I don't think I'm really doing this in a way that's causing any harm to anyone. I just notice this pattern in my behavior.
Yeah. No, for sure. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Oh, kids.
Yep.
Can't protect them. Can't kill them. That feels like a good place to leave us for the week, right?
Yeah. That's what I always say.
All right, so that is episode 9, Screaming Meemies. We will be back next week to finish the show. Episode 10, Silence Lay Steadily. We have a mere hour and change between us and the end of this whole entire show. I can't believe it.
All right.
Yeah. All right. We good to move on to the discussion question, Matt?
Let's do it. Yep.
What was our discussion question? This was from episode 7, I believe.
The discussion question was, what is your favorite eulogy?
Well, that makes sense because that was the title of the episode.
That's right. I had to do a little bit more kind of handpicking this time because I realized that when you ask for what is your favorite eulogy in a story, you're going to get a lot of spoilers for a lot of stories.
Yeah, you were essentially asking, what is your favorite instance in which a main character in a story dies?
Yeah. So
Oops.
I'm going to do something. So first of all, I intentionally didn't pick some of the ones that I was just like, I don't want to spoil this for everyone who might not have read this thing. And then the other ones, I think I'm going to like give you a spoiler warning first so you can have a chance to skip past it.
Seems fair.
So Steve Living Room. So the spoiler for this one is for What Dreams May Come. So skip ahead if you don't want to be spoiled. And by the way, I already know I'm going to cry when I read this.
Oh my God.
They say, I have to go with Chris Nielsen's eulogy for his son in What Dreams May Come. Just a beautiful scene. and then they quote the whole eulogy, which I guess I have to read because you wrote it here, Steve Living Room.
Yeah, you do. Sorry.
Okay. There's a man Ian never got to know, the man he was growing up to be. He's a good-looking, clear-eyed young fella, about 25. I can see him. He's the type of guy that men want to be around because he has integrity, he has character. You can't fake that. He's a guy women want to be around too because there's tenderness in him, respect, loyalty, and courage. And women respond to that. Makes him a terrific husband, this guy. I see him as a father. That's where he really shines. See, when he looks in his kid's eyes and that kid knows that his dad really sees him, he sees who he is, then that child knows that he is an amazing person. He's quite a guy that I'll never get to meet. I wish I had. And then there's a shot of his son Ian inside his coffin, and then presumably everyone cries.
That movie, man. that fucking movie.
I'm not sure if I've seen that movie, actually.
You haven't seen What Dreams May Come? Oh my god.
What Dreams May Come?
It's not actually a spoiler for What Dreams May Come because, like, essentially the inciting incident of that movie is that they lose their children in a car crash, and then a few years later, Robin Williams' character also dies in a car crash, and then goes to heaven, which is some like cool, like very artistic, like watercolor version of heaven. But then I'm not going to talk about the rest of it. It's it's like, it's just really fucked me up real bad. Especially as like someone who was raised Catholic, like eagerly looking forward to heaven one day. And then in this version of heaven, he gets there and then he's like, I'm really worried about my wife and what's going on with her. Can I please go check on my wife who has now lost both her children and her father in a car crash? Oh, she's not doing well? Shit, I'm really nervous and worried about that. I'm like, wait a minute. In heaven, I'm nervous and worried about things? That's not how that's supposed to work. I don't like that heaven.
Yeah.
I want to be happy all the time.
This was the really interesting thing we were doing in the 90s where there were tons of movies about like the afterlife and angels.
Mm-hmm.
We were having a cultural moment.
Yeah, that's very true. Anyway, next we have Kame 1919, who says, the only real answer for me is the BoJack Horseman Season 5 episode Free Churro. The episode is a roughly 30-minute monologue that outside of the cold open focuses solely on BoJack as he speaks at his mother's funeral. This is the episode of TV that by all rights shouldn't work, which even BoJack points out in the previous episode, saying, no show should have this much talking. TV is a visual medium. Free Churro is a masterclass in doing what the show does best and delicately weaves emotional blows as BoJack recounts his troubling childhood with his emotionally abusive parents, works through his grief, and somehow delivers quick jokes to lighten the heavy load. I cannot heap enough praise on this episode, and I can't find the words to do it justice. If you haven't seen it, please get a box of tissues and make some time. All three of us were drowning, and we didn't know how to save each other, but there was an understanding that we would all be drowning together. I've seen that show and that episode, and I just completely agree. It's marvelous. It's marvelous television. BoJack Horseman is like, I don't understand how this show existed, but it did, and it got many seasons, and it was remarkable, actually.
I do need to get around to watching that someday.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds really compelling.
Yeah.
All right. Pear Jane says, alas, poor Yorick. I knew him, Horatio, a fellow of infinite jest, of most excellent fancy. Hamlet's moment with his childhood jester's skull returns to me at the most random times, and thinking about it now, I think it's because his impromptu eulogy typifies what I loathe most about Hamlet.
This went such a different direction than I thought it was going.
His soliloquy mainly focuses on the joy Yorick brought Hamlet, and then, of course, how it's pointless because he's dead now. But Yorick wasn't just the prince's playmate. He was a human being with a whole life outside of Hamlet's purview, and none of that occurs to Hamlet. He only acknowledges the funny human toy he loved, how the toy is dead now, and his next thought is to frighten his mother with it, to show that even as she makes up her face, she'll end up a skull one day. Sure, I know his uncle killed his dad and he saw a ghost, and he is, for the first time in his pampered life, dealing with trauma, but you don't need to kill your girlfriend's dad, drive her insane, and then kill everyone else. Men will do anything to avoid therapy. P.S. David Tennant's delivery is one of the best, most sympathetic I've seen. That's fine.
I love Hamlet.
Thank you,
and
Pear Jane.
I completely agree with Pear Jane here. I love the play so much. Was it's the Kenneth Branagh version that's like 1 billion hours long, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
And then there was also, speaking of the 90s being a wild time, there was the Mel Gibson helmed Hamlet.
Yes. Which is the one my mom took me to see in the theaters. And then I cried at the end because I was a little child, and the idea that
Hamlet,
Hamlet,
6 years old.
Because I was 6 years old, and Hamlet dying was not something I was prepared for. This was probably honestly like formative for me. The idea that I saw Hamlet when I was 6 years old and I cried in terms of like responding to stories.
That's awesome. Man, Shakespeare always wins for me. So great pick.
Yeah.
Apocalypse Win 7 says, my favorite eulogy is in the lesser-known movie Habit, which is about an alcoholic who just lost his father and ends up being seduced by a woman who may or may not be a vampire. Again, this went a direction that I was not anticipating. About halfway through the film, he asks to give a speech during an in memoriam event at the university where his father worked. It is far from a polished speech. It's meandering, he stumbles over his words, and he seems generally at a loss for what to say about his dad. What works for me about the eulogy is what is noticeably absent. He describes his father principally through the lens of his beliefs, ideals, and academic work. There is no mention of what their personal relationship as father and son looked like. He concludes the speech by describing his dad as a bitter man, but ultimately, quote, an optimist that was confronted with many disappointments. The look on his face says more than words could, that one of the main disappointments that his father confronted was his own son.
It's great. Very well written answer, Apocalypse Win.
Yeah, that's really fucking heavy for a vampire movie? Question mark.
Yeah. I've never heard of this. It sounds really deep and fun.
Mm-hmm.
Fun's the wrong word. Dramatic. All right. Durin Longbeard is going to tell us about the elementals. They say that my favorite eulogy is from a book I finished just last night, so it's totally not recency bias. The literature in question, The Elementals, by Michael McDowell, centers around a wealthy family in Mobile, Alabama. After the death of the family matriarch, not a spoiler because it's page 1 of the story, the family ventures off to their vacation island. The island has 3 houses, with the center one being consumed by a sand dune and home to entities. Needless to say, some horrifying events follow, and the story keeps a solid level of tension the entire time. The eulogy takes place in the first few pages, and it's not so much what's said, but what's done. The dead woman's son gets up to speak, and in turn pulls out a silver dagger and plunges it into the heart of his mother. Reasons are given, and the craziness takes off from there. This is also a haunted house story, and really exemplifies the some houses are born bad theory. It's also only about 200 pages, so a perfectly quick read while we wrap up the rest of Hill House. Yes, this was a shameless plug for the book. That sounds really fun, actually. That was a good plug. A successful plug.
Yeah.
Never heard of this, though.
No, I never heard of this.
Yeah. All right. So that's the elementals. All right. I'm going to run through everybody else real quick here. Baby, Can You Dig Your Sam? Says Captain Kirk's eulogy for Spock in Star Trek, plus Sam mentions funny eulogies from The Big Lebowski and Heathers. Michael Turn the Key mentions Blank's brief eulogy for Blank in the Dark Tower series.
Oh yeah, I love Blank.
Relatedly, Better Independence 9 mentions Blank's eulogy for Blank in the Dark Tower.
Is that the same Blank or a different Blank?
We don't know. Different blanks, but the second blank is the same blank. It's important that the first one was a brief eulogy and the second one was just a eulogy.
Of course I know what you're talking about, Matt. You don't have to sell me on it. I read the answers.
I'm helping everyone else. Okay, Row 2424 says the eulogy for Prester John in the Dragonbone chair. Draxus Eridar Lord also chooses the BoJack Horseman episode, noticing that it's noting that it's the opposite of Luke's planned monologue.
Was Luke's monologue planned? I don't know if it was planned.
I might have missummarized this, but sorry about that. Mel Supernatural says Dean Winchester preparing Castile's body for a hunter's funeral in Supernatural. Fault Medium it mentions a character's eulogy for his partner in 4 Weddings and a Funeral. And E-Man 9001 describes the nihilist priest's eulogy in Synecdoche, New York, about how we're all doomed to destroy our lives.
The Times is doing like a public, you're allowed to like submit your top 10 films of the 21st century to them, and they're like collating them all. And I saw one of my favorite film critics just put a submission that was 9 instances of Synecdoche, New York, and then I think one of In Bruges. And I was like, yes, I love this.
Yeah,
I
good
love
list.
that movie so much.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah. We also had one more that came in via email that I'll just say briefly. It was Jonathan H., who says there's a eulogy in season 3, episode 2 of The Sopranos. Tony's blank, 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 blank. I can't really go into any much more than that because I don't want to spoil it. And also, I haven't seen The Sopranos. So that's the other thing Jonathan mentions is like that we, unlike an old episode of Kingslingers, we both admitted that we had never watched The Sopranos. And here, years later, that is still true.
Yeah.
One day, Jonathan, one day, I promise.
Yeah, the problem with TV of that era is that there are 86 episodes of The Sopranos. And it's going to be hard for me to find like 86 hours of time, just period, ever.
Yeah.
In the rest of my life. So
for sure.
Yeah. Anyway.
Especially with all this watching for podcasts we have to do.
Exactly.
Yeah. Maybe we'll do a Sopranos pod. No, we're not doing that. I don't want to excite anyone or make anyone think anything like that's happening. It's not.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for sending in those questions. Man, I enjoy eulogies. I enjoy speeches in my narrative media. I really do like them, which is probably why I like Flanagan so much.
Makes sense.
One of the many reasons. Yeah. So thank you for sending those in. That was really cool to read. All right, Matt. What about next time? What are we doing?
Next week, what's your favorite instance of a character thinking that they're dreaming when they're not?
Ooh. Could you also do a character thinking they're not dreaming when they are?
I think because there's probably not like a million instances of this, I think we're going to be pretty lax in our judgment criteria. So, yeah, sure.
I don't think we've ever once been like, that does not fit the bounds of our question rule.
Yeah.
Denied. So, yeah.
While I'm just kind of screwing up this discussion question, I would be interested to hear, like, at what point in this episode we just discussed did people realize that Abigail was a real person? I mean, it's probably just like when at the latest, like when you see her in the bed. So this is not the discussion question. I'm literally just asking if people are going to be commenting. Maybe just mention that if you have thoughts on it.
Yeah, that's fun. Did anyone kind of figure it out before the show kind of comes right out and tells it to you?
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
It's also interesting that she never like says, "Oh, you're Clara Dudley's daughter," right? Mm-hmm. Like it's just kind of inferred through a lot of the episode.
So okay, funny that we're talking about this because from her point of view, it's almost like I'm dreaming. So Luke's imaginary friend is here in my dream.
Yeah. Could be, yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of what I thought was her interpretation.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Possible. She did never learn the name of the child that her housekeeper has.
Exactly.
It's wild. Speaking of, one more thing I wanted to say. The Cranes are clearly not good employees to their housekeepers because they don't bother to learn things about names. But also, they need to check the people that they're hiring to work on this house. Because I don't know if you caught it, but there's a dude in a scene that's painting, and he's painting a wall right above like a marble statue, and there's no like throw tarp or cloth on the statue at all. He's just above the statue painted. You're gonna drip paint on that, dude. What's wrong with you?
He's probably a ghost.
Well, I mean that's possible.
See, there you go.
I'm gonna say, like, I don't believe in ghosts, but if I had to be clock ghost or painting wall ghost, I'd be pretty pissed off that that's how I'm going to spend my afterlife. It's just chilling next to a clock that's never going to be fixed.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I would be sitting at computer ghost, which is even worse.
Oh my God. I just had so many images flash in my head. We're going to be a world of sitting at computer ghosts.
Yeah. Wow, that's it's a horrifying thought. I love it.
All right, folks, that is going to do it for us this week. As we said, next week is the finale of The Haunting of Hill House, episode 10, Silence Lay Steadily. Oh my gosh, Matt. You have no idea. You have no idea what's waiting for you.
I'm excited.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
All right. Remember, you can reach us via email at flanaganswakepod@gmail.com, over on x.com at flanaganswake19, and on Instagram at doofmedia, on Blue Sky at flanaganswakepod, and on the subreddit at reddit.com/r/doofmedia. I know that's a lot of places, but
yeah, you nailed it though.
You'll be okay if you just go to the subreddit, because that's where everybody is chatting about this episode and a bunch of other stuff. So go check that out.
I just remembered that I think I bought us a link tree.
Oh yeah,
like 5 months ago. And I'm pretty sure we've been paying for it this entire time, and I don't think we've used it.
Well,
so that's a little public mental note for me.
I forgot about it too. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, there we go. All right. So if you want to support us wasting money on a link tree we're not using, you can do so by buying merch at doofmedia.myshopify.com. We have tons of stuff there. We have mugs. We have stickers. We have this sticker right here that I bought several of and gave to my son, and he like immediately stuck it on his shirt and then took it off 5 minutes later, and I was like, oh. But we have stickers, we have shirts, we have mugs, we have the whole thing. If you want to support Flanagan's Wake or just show off that you're insane, you can do so at doofmedia.myshopify.com.
That's right. And if you want to support us in other ways, you can head on over to patreon.com/doofmedia and support us there. You get access to bonus podcasts and all kinds of other cool stuff.
Yeah. Of course, if you cannot afford to do that, you can still help us out by continuing to share the show. Please keep it up. Please share the show. We're seeing that number of listeners rise each week, and that is because of you guys. So thank you for doing that. Please keep doing it. And please keep leaving us ratings and reviews. I am not looking at my screen right now because I'm looking at my phone trying to find the latest rating and review. I don't know if we have any new ones today, Matt.
Does that mean we have to burn a
what
do we on Kingslingers we were burning Stephen King novels?
Yeah, every time we didn't get a new review, we threatened to set a Stephen King novel on fire.
Yeah.
To teach you guys what to do.
Well, think of some punishment. Oh, you found one. Okay.
I found one. Yeah.
Okay.
Kindle customer gives us 5 stars and says, worth your time. In-depth analysis of all things related to Mike Flanagan's work. 2 really good hosts who are funny, charming, and they don't screw around. Now, Kindle customer, you called me charming, and so you're my favorite person of all time. But I gotta nitpick. We definitely screw around. like a lot. A lot.
But we appreciate that you feel that way about us.
Yeah, I'm good. We're giving off that vibe despite frequently doing the exact opposite.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you for that review. Thank you all for sending those reviews in. We do appreciate it. And like we say, they do really help people find the show. So please keep them up. Keep them coming. We're almost done with Hill House. I can't believe it. We're going to be moving into Dr. Sleep next, and then on to Bly Manor after that. So exciting things coming up. We want to make sure everyone can find them.
Yeah, I am super excited, and I'm super excited for finishing this show next week.
Yeah, which we will be doing next Thursday, episode 10, Silence Lay Steadily. We'll see you there. Until then, rest in peace, Mr. Flanagan. Oh, you didn't laugh. I have to stop doing it now.